Right. Ibrahim, I think our colleague Noor has her hand up, so you should be able to move her.
Yes, I did, and I will add her to as interpreter.
Okay, wonderful. So I think, welcome colleagues. We are just waiting for the webinar to fully open and all the attendees to come in, to show up. Actually, the numbers are increasing, so we'll give it a minute or two. Right. Okay, we had many registered, so let's see if everybody turns up. So Jumana, should we go? I think we're about 3 minutes.
I think, yes.
Okay, we're about 3 minutes into the session, so we could start. Good afternoon, colleagues. Really great to have you all here. Thank you for joining in and making the time. We know this is a busy time of the year. My name is Neha Kapil, and I serve as the Regional Advisor for Social and Behavior Change and Community Engagement in UNICEF Middle East and North Africa Regional Office. I am going to be your moderator today, and just to let you know that this is the first in a series of webinars that we have planned through starting this year and running right through next year in the lead up to the SBCC Global Summit, the third one, which was scheduled to take place in December next year. I will have our colleagues from the American University of Beirut, our colleague Jumana Kalot, who will tell us more about this. We have an exciting lineup of expert speakers today who are going to be talking to you about some of the case studies that some of you have submitted for the SBCC Summit. And we have also with us two of our colleagues from the UNICEF MENA Regional Office, Chris Comency and Tariq Hussain, who are experts in wash and climate change, who will be talking to us a little bit about this area of work within the MENA region. So I don't want to take a lot of time. Actually, we will run through for an hour and a half. We have short, brief presentations, and then we will have the space to have questions and answers from all of you. We will start first with opening remarks from our colleague Jumana Kalot, who represents the AUB. This webinar is a collaboration between AUB and UNICEF, working with the SBCC Summit conveners. So Jumana, with that, over to you, and then I'll come back and we'll have Chris in. So over to you.
Thank you, Neha, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar on water, environment, sanitation, and climate change. My name is Jumana Kalot, and I am from the Center for Public Health Practice at the Faculty of Health Sciences at the American University of Beirut, representing the International SBCC Summit Secretariat and co-organizing this series of webinars, Voices from the MENA, with UNICEF's regional office. Before I introduce our topics of today's webinar, I would like to give you a brief on the Secretariat events that will lead up, as my colleague Neha said, to the SBCC Summit in December 2022. As you know, the 2020 Summit was postponed till December 2022. Leading up to December 2022, there are so many 2022s, the Secretariat has supported the organization of regional events. So each region from South Asia, Africa, the MENA, has taken a lead in designing a program that highlights some of the work that was submitted for the 2020 Summit. In addition to the work that has been submitted, the regional events also added to it some trends such as climate change, of course, COVID-19, migration, and many range of other topics that we included in these regional webinars. The topics and dates for these regional events, all of them can be found on the summit website that is being posted. I just posted it on the chat box. In addition to the regional events that the Secretariat is supporting, we have developed a poster book that also hosted on the summit website that has each of the posters that were submitted and accepted. You will find in our website, on the SBCC summit website, a poster book with all the accepted posters that were submitted to the 2020 summit. Additionally, there's an abstract database that hosts all the oral abstracts from the 2020. These can be found on the Communication Initiative website or a link through the website summit. And lastly, please don't forget the new date for the summit. It is December 5 to 9, 2022, and join us in Morocco. The themes that we have put in the 2022 remain the same as the previous one in 2020. However, we have integrated some lessons from COVID-19. So please keep an eye for opening of registration and call for abstracts for the Morocco International Summit from 5 to 9 December 2022. Now back to our regional MENA events, Voices from MENA series of webinars that will represent current evidence and innovation from social behavior change communication projects throughout the MENA region. The focus area of these webinars include WASH and climate change, which is the our current topic for today. We will have another webinar on adolescent and youth, another one on gender-based violence and protection, and health and nutrition. Today, we're having, as my colleague Niha said, our first webinar on water, environment, sanitation, and climate change. And we will start by our colleague from UNICEF, MENA, Mr. Chris Cormsty. He's the UNICEF MENARO WASH Regional Advisor, by setting the frame of WASH and environment. Then we will move to the 3 SBCC regional interventions. The first one will be on using evidence to drive cholera behavior in Yemen. The second one is moving from despair to hope, changing solid waste behaviors in Azraq refugee camp in Jordan. And the third one, don't estimate the drop campaign in Jordan. And we will end their presentations by climate change and water scarcity in the region. After the presentations, we will have a Q&A session. Please, now I will give the floor to Chris. Please, would each presenter and co-facilitators introduce themselves when their turn comes and abide by the 10 minutes duration of their session. Once again, thank you for joining, and over to you, Chris.
Jumana and Chris, if I could just come in for a quick second. We just wanted to remind all our colleagues who've joined for this webinar that there is interpretation in Arabic also available, and you have to click on the Arabic, the button by the side. It says interpretation. It should say that on your screens, and you can click Arabic. To the interpreters, we hear you. There is a slight additional layering of some sound at the back. So maybe I think one of you may need to switch off your, I think it's a mic or something like that, so that there's no cross voices. So just to say that, but the Arabic translation is working for those of you who want to hear this in Arabic. So Chris, sorry, I just wanted to make that clear. Over to you, Chris, and thanks, Jumana.
No problem. Thanks, Neha, for the introduction, and happy to be here. Hello to everyone, and of course, thanks to the organizers for inviting me to this super interesting seminar. And I'm looking forward to the discussions today. I think maybe to get started, well, first of all, let me introduce myself. So my name is Corman. I'm the regional advisor for water sanitation and climate change in the Middle East and North Africa regional office for UNICEF, based in Amman, Jordan. To get started, I thought we'd just go over some of the key information because I'm not sure of the population of the audience. So some of the key bits about, from our perspective, let's say on climate wash situation in the Middle East. First is this region, although we have relatively high coverage rates of water and sanitation in general compared to some of the other regions globally, we still have some 47 million people in the region that lack access to basic drinking water services. And we have 67 million people who lack access to basic sanitation. We know that this region is warming due to climate change at twice the global average. And some models are predicting by 2050, the region could be as much as 4 degrees on average higher than it was at the beginning of the century. Way beyond, of course, the 1.5 degrees set in the Paris Agreement. The region contains 11 of the 17 most water scarce countries in the world. And we did some analysis of that, and we know that almost 9 out of every 10 children in this region are living in an area of high water stress or extremely high water stress. And we know, of course, that climate change is going to aggravate water scarcity even more in the future, as we have, less consistent rainfalls. We have more extreme weather events. We'll have less recharge of the aquifers and less surface water as well. We also know that in MENA, at least from, important from our perspective, is that young people are the fastest growing population. Some 60% of the region's population is under 25. It makes this region one of the most youthful regions in the world. Another thought that comes, of course, is that humans causing climate change, but the most vulnerable who suffer the impacts of climate change are not the ones who are polluting. They're not the ones that are causing global gas buildup, but they will be the ones who have to adapt their lives significantly and potentially change their livelihoods due to the impacts of climate change. Climate change will impact all of our lives. And there's no question about that as we look at the projections going forward. We're going to hear today from our colleagues in Yemen talking about their cholera behavior change experiences. And we know, for example, that Yemen is one of the most water scarce countries in the world. We know that the rains haven't been consistent, the aquifers are drying up. And when we think about behavior change around cholera and we think about hygiene, of course, as the water becomes more and more scarce, the ability of a mother in Yemen to wash her hands becomes more and more challenging amongst the many competing priorities of water. That situation is going to deteriorate, and it's so critical in an cholera endemic country that we start to think about that. We start to think about how can we change behaviors around things like water conservation, around climate change in general. So from my side as a regional advisor for UNICEF on this topic, some of the questions that come to mind that I'm hoping to hear about today from some of the from the panelists, but also from some of the participants are, do we know what the key climate change and water scarcity behaviors are that we want to target? I've got some thoughts on that, of course, but I'd be really interested to hear from some of the other presenters and then questions at the end. And can we group them like we do on interventions? So in climate change interventions, we always talk about mitigation and adaptation. Is it possible to think about behaviors in that context? Maybe we're already doing it. We know, of course, that the behaviors around mitigation, around adaptation depend on that target population, but perhaps there's commonalities amongst them. And then what are the determinants of those common behaviors that we can take lessons learned from maybe somebody working in agriculture to somebody working in sanitation promotion? And of course, has that formative research around SBCC that we know is critical. Has it been done in the region? Has it been done in some of these population sets? And how far are we? So do we know, for example, how to work with rural farmers on encouraging them to adopt water efficient irrigation? We know that in this region, farming consumes 80% of freshwater resources, and that's the highest globally as well. We have to work with farmers if we're going to really think about addressing water scarcity and climate change. Another example I think about is water conservation. How can we trigger household level behaviors on water conservation behaviors by the mother, by the father? I live in Amman, Jordan, of course, so I'm looking forward to today's panelist presentation on the Jordan experience to get some insights. And then I wonder, of course, would the successes there translate into successes in Libya or in Morocco or Iraq? I also wonder about changing pollution behavior. So solid waste, for example, in large population centers. How do we go about that as just keeping our environment safe? And of course, we have the case study on Azraq today that I'm really interested in hearing about as well. And then my final thought on this topic is youth. I mentioned at the beginning that we have a huge youth population. And of course, globally, we know that the youth are the ones driving climate change action globally. But I've seen a few or two surveys recently that indicate that climate change is not a priority amongst youth in this region. And that got me to think a little bit about, do we know why that is? Of course, there's competing issues on the minds of young people in this region, maybe in comparison to some other more developed regions or European or North American youth. But at the same time, we know that youth are the ones that are most passionate about it in these areas where they're interacting. So how can we trigger that? And then also importantly, how can we build the capacities of youth to make sure that, they're able to fulfill that, sort of agent of change role that we really count on them to do. So for me, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks again. I'm looking forward to learning more about the SBCC and climate change, environmental degradation, water scarcity, all these linkages. I hope to learn a lot in today's webinar on this critical topic and looking forward to getting to know you all better. Thank you, Neha. I pass it back to you.
Thanks, Chris. Some really provocative questions there, and I'm hoping that the examples would maybe start getting to some of the points that you've raised for us. So we'll start with our first presentation from Yemen. Nana and the Yemen C4D team at UNICEF, please do come in, introduce yourselves, and you have about 10 minutes to go. Over to you.
Thank you, Neha. And hello, colleagues. Glad to be part of this webinar. The Yemen presentation on using evidence to drive cholera behavior change is being presented by myself, Nana Gabra-Edu, and my two colleagues, Dennis Chimeya, who is the current chief of C4D in the Yemen country office, and Abdullah El Shehari, who is our C4D officer for knowledge management. I don't know, I think there's a problem with my video. I hope you can see me. Neha, can you see me?
Yes, we see you.
Thank you, because I'm not showing on my own screen, so I was getting a little worried. So as I said, the presentation is by myself, Dennis, and Abdallah. You know the story of Yemen. I think Chris has already mentioned some of the issues that we face in Yemen, but Yemen has been described as the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. Millions are without water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities. There's ongoing conflict. It hasn't stopped. It's been going for more than 6 years. And it's also been described as having the worst cholera outbreak in the world. The first wave was in 2016. To date, we have over 2.5 million suspected cases with about 4,000 associated deaths. So it's big. In a situation like that, what do you do? For us, it was trying to strategize, one, to save lives, but also to see that people adopt practices that protect them and prevent further outbreaks of cholera. So our strategy was, how do we strategize? How do we track progress? How do we show results? How do we show or try to understand the practices, the behaviors, the attitudes that drive the cholera outbreak? And then to do this, of course, we needed evidence and more evidence. So how do we go about generating this evidence? The evidence generation strategy in Yemen was not just limited to the C4D section. Rani, I think we have to go to the next slide. Thank you. It was all of the related sections working together. So for WASH, there was evidence generation for the rapid response teams, trying to see the quality of the engagement at the household level, looking at household practices at home. For health, it was looking at the oral rehydration centers, the cholera treatment centers. But for C4D, it was to look at behaviors. And for the behaviors, we needed to understand what people were doing, what their perceptions were, and what would motivate them to adopt the positive practices. And for this, we had today 3 rounds of what we call the behavior indicator monitoring studies. This was done in 98 hard-to-reach districts. We have 333 districts in Yemen. So that's about 1/3 of it in 14 governorates, looking at 10,000 households and in food vending locations. This was a multi-stage cluster sample study using mixed approaches. So there were in-person, semi-structured interviews, key informant interviews, and key was observations in households and food vending sites. Especially for hygiene behaviors, that what people report is not what they usually do. And let's look at the slide on now. For hand washing behavior, 72% of people said they wash their hands with soap, but this was not shown in the observation. We saw that people were not washing their hands with soap before eating. People were not washing their hands with soap after cleaning up a child who has used the toilet, and people were not washing their hands with soap after using the toilet themselves. Again, when it comes to water sources, which is also a key driver of cholera, we saw that sources of water was mixed. It was boreholes, trucks, and sometimes piped to the home, or people got water from the charity water points, which are water donated by willing, God-fearing people in the communities. But what we noticed was that the collection, the carrying, and the tracking of these this water was not the best for the community. They were often contaminated, and there were anecdotal evidence that some of the trucks used to ferry water were even used to carry raw sewage. Next slide. Key for us really as behavior change experts was the perception that water was already safe, which meant that our messaging that people should chlorinate water was not being followed. So chlorination of water was very low. Even where water was chlorinated, people would rather use them for other things rather than drink them or use them for household purposes. So this was one of the challenges that we faced. People were not treating water either by boiling or chlorination. They just drank it as it was because it looked safe, it looked clean. Next slide. Another interesting fact that we found out was that there were disparities around open defecation. We thought open defecation was a driver. It is a driver, but there were several districts where there was no open defecation. People had toilets and religiously used those toilets. But again, in some of the districts, open defecation was as high as 50%. In fact, we had 2 districts where it was over 70%, and in some of the districts, 25%. So you see where we are coming from. It's in the water, it's also in how excreta was disposed of in the community. And in the observation, we found out that there was feces around the surrounding of some of the households. Next slide. Similar findings for food safety. A lot of homes had cooked food that had not been covered, were left open to flies, to other rodents. There were, we observed, evidence of rodents in some households, in some food vending areas. Vendors sold food with bare unwashed hands. They scooped the food out for people without washing their hands. And in some of the households, over 50%, the food preparation areas were really, really, really described as very dirty or non-hygienic. Next slide. So with all of this information, what did we do? One, we rethought our strategy. We went back and we looked at what we could do to show more results, get people to adopt the practices we are promoting. We revamped all of the cholera communication materials, our approaches, our messages, our materials. We came up with totally new materials, totally new approaches, used a lot of entertainment education approaches. We brought in new community level resources, so religious leaders, rapid response teams, volunteers, and we made sure that they had the skills, the interpersonal communication skills, and the knowledge to go out and engage, quality engagement with people at the household level. We also made sure that we focused on districts where there was no progress. So we did district-specific interventions, looking at the data that was coming. And for behavior change, you can all agree that it doesn't make sense to go talking about open defecation if there's no open defecation in the community. So we did context, locality-specific interventions, messaging, and approaches. And I think one of the key things also was that this evidence helped us to scale up our advocacy for investments in WASH and in risk communication and social and behavior change communication. Next slide. So what did we learn? What did we get from all of this work that we did? I think for us, key was that evidence helps us to rally people around an issue. So the data got the partners all to work together. Everybody was excited because regularly we're getting information on what was happening. Our plan was to have done the behavior indicator monitoring studies every quarter. But knowing Yemen and the situation we face, the security situation, we couldn't do this. So it worked out on average to be every 6 months. Partners were excited because every 6 months there was new information on how we're doing, what was working, what was not working. So it got everybody engaged. I think the other lesson for us also is that user-friendly evidence generation is possible. Surveys have their place, large-scale studies are critical, but small doable studies can be done and help to keep the strategy, the interventions going and at a higher scale than we would normally have done. I think for us also, another lesson was that we need to work together. It should not just be C4D going out to talk about behavior change. We work hand in hand with WASH, with health. One of the things we found was that you go and you talk and people are like, you come and talk about communication, you don't give us anything. So working with health, then we start seeing how we can motivate people to adopt the behavior. So we started distributing soap in marginalized communities so people would have the tools to adopt the practices we were pushing. I think this is it from us in the Yemen country team. We'll keep the rest for when we have the panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nana, Dennis, and Abdullah for this presentation and a great focus and emphasis on data that you bring to the fore. So we will keep the questions for after the presentations. We note that there is a question in the question answer box, and we will come back to it. So from Yemen now, we will move to Jordan, and we have our colleagues Dominique and Iyad here. And Dominique, please do introduce yourself, and the floor is yours. Dominic, we don't hear you. No, we don't hear you. Could you check from your side if Iyad is able to log in as well? No, we don't hear you. We can see you, but we don't hear you. No, Dominique, I'm afraid we can't hear you. I thought it was all okay.
What
yes.
about? Can you hear me
Yes.
now?
That's good. That's good. We
Okay.
hear you now. Okay, then.
I just fixed my. It seems my wireless buds is not working. Anyway, I'm Dominique Deborah. I've been behavior change communications specialist working with different projects with USAID, Asian Development Bank, and for this project with World Vision International and funded by the European Union. So this case study is about the Asrak refugee camp, where we tried changing solid waste management behaviors. Just a bit of a background. So among the refugee camps in Asrak, in Jordan, Asrak is the one that is most remote. And so when we started the project, they have around 25 tons. They gathered 25 tons of mixed waste, and these are all brought to the dump site, municipal dump site. Can you just stay at that? And since the challenge here, the main objective of the projects is to reduce the amount of mixed waste that goes to the municipal dump site, and also to recover as much recyclables. So in order to achieve this, we need to ensure that the Syrian refugees are recycling and segregating their waste in their household level, in their shelters. So we did formative research, we did a lot of KIIs, FGDs, and we did a household survey where we we'll look into their current practice, we'll look into their knowledge as well as their attitudes, and we conducted a barrier analysis to look at what could be the possible barriers for all the behavior change interventions that we will be introducing. So the results of our study led us to develop the strategy wherein we engage volunteers, we train volunteers, and we also learned from this picture, from that slide, that it is the children who are tasked, as young as 5 years old, who are tasked, with throwing the waste in the garbage bin, and they don't segregate then, and it's just they just throw it, and sometimes they would when it's heavy, they would wrap it and just let it stay there. So we had to, one of the things we identified is we need to engage top volunteers who could be the community mobilizers. So we got not just men and women, but also children, knowing that they play an active role in throwing the trash, and then also segregating. So we look at the different opportunities we can engage them, and like everyone, when they are waiting in queue with lines, their meetings, we engage them. And then since children are the ones who are actively involved in the waste, throwing the waste and also segregating, we found after some of the visits of the community mobilizers, they were the ones who are really segregating. As you can see here, this young girl, Hannah, was really, after the initial visit, she took it upon herself to segregate all the recyclables, and then ensure that there's also a different bin for all the organic waste, so that those organic waste are the ones that goes to the dump site, and then all the recyclables are brought to the green center. And to make it fun and engage them, we utilize music. This you can see are these are the Syrian musicians in the camp, and they were composing, using the messages, solid waste management messages. They put a catchy tune to it, and we would have all this gathering with all the children and with everyone in the field. So you can see in Asrak, so they have that. And then another the next slide also shows like all the children gathering, and those young boys, they are really singers. So aside from the music, because it was, when you have a catchy tune, everyone can just follow, and then it retains longer in their mind. So, and then we also had poetry. So those who are gifted with the, with writing, they write poems about the need to segregate your solid waste. And then we have all these puppet shows, and like our community mobilizer there, that's Lena, was showing the different bins, the green for the organic waste and the blue for the recyclable. So after it was very successful, that's why it led all the recyclables. There was an increase of recyclables that were gathered, and they were all brought to the green center, which is the next slide. So this is where we process all the recyclables gathered from the villages in the Astrak refugee camp. I will hand over to Iyad, who is the project manager to discuss more on the Green Center and also on the next phase of the project, because of its success, it was given new funding. So Iyad, over to you.
So thank you, Dominique. Hello, everyone. I'm using Dominique name, but here is Iyad Samawi. I'm the project manager for the solid waste management project from World Vision in the Azraq camp, Jordan. So let me start by mentioning that Jordan is one of the countries that most affected by the Syria crisis, with the second highest share of refugees compared to its population in the world. Almost 90% Syrian residents in the camp, with the Azraq camp currently hosting over than 40,000 registered refugees. I would like to mention here either that in 2017, the Green Center was established in the Azraq camp, funded by the EU and World Vision Germany and US. It was a pilot project to provide an environmentally solid waste management to its residents, with less waste taken to the landfill due to cover the recyclable materials. Here in this slide, you can show, or you can notice, the current intervention under the GIZ managed EUTF, supported and since January 2020. The new intervention has been started for the upcoming 35 months, and with a possibility of extension, since we are providing or having a good results in this. As per the next slide, we can see the expected results that we are looking for in this project. First of all, let's say that we are looking for waste collection and separation and the processing of recyclables in the Azraq camp, and it was enhanced through using the IBVs for collection, for the litter picking, either for the sorting and sale of processed material, which were bringing a revenue to the project. We were expecting either the Syrian refugees, the household in Azraq camp, have to increase their capacity by providing short-term opportunities, the incentive-based volunteering in the solid waste management services by the three components: the operational, the litter picking, and the behavior change components. Either we are looking to reduce the conflict potential related to the solid waste management through enhance the awareness of approximate 40,000 refugees in the Azraq camp, keeping them healthy and clean environment in the camp, and the importance of waste segregation in the household level, as my colleague Dominique was mentioning before, and to increase the capacity of Azraq municipality to be better later on hand over the project when the time will be ended in the upcoming period. The proposed intervention, or the current intervention, let's say, are targeting several types of beneficiaries, and this is one of the strongest point in the project. And this intervention, we are targeting two types of beneficiaries: direct and indirect. We are targeting as an indirect more than 40,000 refugees in the Azraq camp, in addition to the INGO center and all the security forces in the Azraq municipalities. And we are targeting either Zarqa municipality, where we are using the landfill there, and we are enhancing the capacities of these municipalities. As a direct beneficiaries, we are targeting to reach 2,409 Syrian refugees, divided by the following: 165 in total for the Green Center IBVs, which is the operational part, 714 for the behavior change component, and we are targeting women in this topic as per the photo to ensure that we are empowering the woman lady in the Azraq camp, and 1,530 for the litter picking component is as a total beneficiaries number. At the next slide, we can see some of the statistics that we are collecting on daily basis and monthly basis. The total waste collected on monthly basis, we are collecting up to 500 ton of the mixed waste and segregated waste as per the bins and barrels in the camp. Recyclable materials are recovered on a monthly basis, 55 ton in average, which means that we are reducing around 11% from the total collected waste to be disposed in the municipalities' landfills. So in the next slide, we are after this intervention and after having 2 years with GIZ and EU Madad in this intervention, one of the outcomes, let's say that the waste collection and separation in the Azraq refugees camp are enhanced using IBVs. It was an effective approach. We are providing several work opportunities in the Azraq camp, and since June 2020, we're still leading the camp recruitment process in the Azraq camp. As I mentioned that we are improved the solid waste management services in the Azraq camp and the behavior change and the litter picking components. We're still cleaning. We have a new component as the litter picking to clean all the streets and communal areas, and the litter picking components IBVs are supporting to segregate the waste that through on the ground by using the two coded colors for the green one and the blue one. And the behavior change IBVs are raising the awareness by conducting household visits to the camp resident or providing several sessions. But some of the activities was postponed due to COVID period and the lockdowns in the whole world. We are enhanced the awareness of 40,000 refugees, as we mentioned before, and we are providing a project revenue. And it was increased since the last phase from $3,500 USD on a monthly basis to reach $7,500 USD in this intervention. I would like to mention here, as the last photo, you can see a picture reflecting the next slide, please. The last one, yes. This photo is reflecting the hope that the solid waste management project was providing to the camp resident and the IBVs by providing cash for work opportunities for the refugees and the camp resident to provide the basic needs for their homes, to feed their children, to provide the medicines either. This is the hope that we are providing. This is a positive habit that we are providing or we are working on to make it sustainable habits in the camp since 2017, and with this intervention and the current one and with the upcoming period, hopefully we'll be providing more and more positive habits to be mentioned later on. That's from my side. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Iyad and Dominique, for a very interesting presentation that highlighted sort of the evidence and creativity and innovation in the way you're approaching this. But I also like the larger program context that you have set your intervention around, and it was useful to see how the different pieces were coming together. So colleagues, we have around 2 or 3 questions that have come up, and we will go through one more presentation and then have some room for questions. Aisha, we note that your hand is up, so we will come back to you. But let's move on to the last presentation that we have, or case example that we have, which is around water conservation, another example from Jordan. And Maha, the floor is yours. Please do introduce yourself as also the organizational context in which you have been working.
Thank you very much. I'm Maha Durgam. I'm a SBCC specialist working with different donors and organizations. This project is coming from a water management initiative project funded by USAID and implemented through Tetra Tech. I'm a co-founder of the Jordan Social Marketing Center in Jordan. And here I'm bringing one of the campaigns that was implemented back on 2019 in the summer in Jordan. Next slide, please. So our campaign is about don't underestimate the value of the drop, talking about water conservation, and was designed using the social marketing approach that started with understanding the audience. So if in the next slide, we will see that we have started by, now the map of Jordan will come. We have started with a baseline study. This baseline study covered the 3 governorates of Jordan, Irbid, Amman, and Zarqa, because we have a high density of population, and we have included the Syrian, whether not as refugees in the refugee camp, but in the hosting community as part of our studies. This campaign, the campaign was based on this baseline assessment study, and that used qualitative and quantitative researches. So there was a 3 focus group. Next, please. The 3 focus groups. There was a 3 type of focus groups going on in the 3 governorates. And the next slide, we will see the surveyed population. So we had males and females. We focused on the middle age, but we also made sure that 1/4 of our surveyed populations are from youth. We focused on the families who have 4 to 6 members, and also all the Syrians that were involved in this survey has been in Jordan for 3 or more years. On the next slide, we can start seeing the main findings. The major one was related, in the next one, the major one was related to the knowledge findings. We found out that only 61% of our surveyed population know that Jordan is facing a really water shortage problem. But those who know, they know that this problem is really critical. So we have 36% don't know. The next, in the same slide, the next major thing was that 96% of those who know, they mentioned that they didn't see any actions on the communication activities coming from the government of Jordan. And when asking them why they think that we have this water shortage, they rely on the reason of having more refugees or more guests coming to Jordan and the increase in population, basically. Their household practice came from their point of view as a 4th reason. On the attitude, yes, next please. On the attitude findings, we found that 80+ of our population are in agreement with the government actions to improve water. And they believe that the water situation will be worse in the coming 10 years. Next, please. So they were really definitely in agreement that the case is worse. On the next slide, we can find the practice findings. On the practice findings, we can find that 35% of the surveyed population, they do report the wasted water, only 35%. And when asking them about the current practices that they do to conserve water, we found that they are focusing on the indoor, but also when focusing on the indoor, the behaviors that really cause water saving, such as taking care of their water tank, came in the 3rd and the 5th, level. Taking shorter shower was the hardest behavior for them, actually, and we decided to take it out of the campaign. Then now you will see and how we designed the campaign. So we moved to asking them about the media sources for water-related news, and we found out that 15% they hear nothing or they follow nothing about water-related news. And if you just press next to know that this is coming from Zarqa. In Amman, they are very much on social media and internet, but with limited access to the Water Authority's website. And by assessing the Water Authority websites, at that time, it was very poor, and we worked on it, and there was no social media platforms for the water utilities. There was only one for the ministry. Next slide, please. So we have designed the campaign, the slide after, using social marketing approach. No, please keep it. Using social marketing approach, we have 4 pillars: the design, support, educate, and the control mechanism. On the design and support, it's all about enabling our target audience to really adopt the change that we want. So there is a gap knowledge, and there is how I can contribute to this problem as a resident. And there should be the incentives for what's in it for me that would motivate this person to really do an action. So on the design, we have created the social media platform for Miyahuna, which is one of the biggest water utilities in Jordan, serving Amman, Zarqa, and Madaba. And we have created a website page within their website. It was a knowledge-based website that has 2 parts: facts about water situation in Jordan, and then practices of how to consume water efficiently. And this is still being used by other USAID and other donors projects as well. And there was the promoting of the hotline 117-116, which was recently established by the ministry. And one of the major tools we use to promote it is the mobile maintenance workshops by Miyahuna. On the incentive side, as I said, our messages had a personal benefits, and also there was MENA program that we will see now. Next, please. So next, our campaign had a teaser and revealer. Next, and then we will see now the campaign. So on the knowledge messages, on the knowledge messages, we need to. So this is not the video. This is not the video version, but anyway. So we had two knowledge messages. The first message was a video, and the reason of having these 2 knowledge messages is that we wanted to talk to people about even that we have a good rainfall season in Jordan. That does not mean that Jordan is not a country that is poor in water. A second one is talking about the importance of protecting our groundwater resources. And this is because actually in our survey, we found out that Jordanian, if their water tanks is filled, even in weekly basis, and if they see that the dams are also filled in water, they think we're unsafe. So this is why we had these 2 knowledge messages. Next, there was a call to action message, and also these are videos. The first one is talking about the importance of maintaining the water tank and having the water valve in it. And the reason is that you reduce your water or control your water bill actually. The next one is about the importance of reporting a water leak. And the water leak they need to report it is the one that they see in the streets, because this is how they can actually control or making sure that the utility will be able to supply them with water. Because if the actual line is broken, then the water will not come. Then there was the incentive program, which is MENA program. MENA was about a team of well-trained people coming to the houses and providing more of water-saving devices recommendation to the houses and do some water audits. Next, please. Next slide. Yeah, and then on the impact, next slide. The campaign won the Grand Prix Award in Dubai Links Award. And the campaign has achieved a 20% increase in the previous one, please. 20% increase in the water related knowledge. There was 50 million impressions. No. Yeah. Thank you. Campaign evaluation. Yeah, 50 million impressions. There was 50 million impressions on the campaign messages, and the 3.5 million persons reached by this message. This is just the last comments here, that this is a photo from one of the water tanks, big water resources tanks in Jordan, who just the ministry did the drawing with the campaign slogan on it, and they did that on all the water resources tanks around Amman and in the major governorate, just to keep people, reminding them of the importance of this drop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maha, for a great presentation as well. Very useful also to see campaign evaluation data, which is not often something, at least for SBCC, has not been a common practice, and is something that we really do want to improve. So colleagues, what we'll do is we do have another very exciting presentation on climate change and really the realities of what is happening in the world now, particularly for the region. But we're going to hold on that, and we'll take a few questions for the three presenters, and actually also Chris and Jumana before. So maybe we'll start with there was a question from Maria Galagos. Would you like to come in? I don't know if you're still online, but it's a very good question. Maria, can you come in and speak? All right, if not, then I guess there's a question, and it really came at the time, Chris, I hope you're online. It came at the time, oh, right, okay, maybe I think that you're not able to maybe come in this webinar format because it's not a typical Zoom call. So maybe I'll read out your question. It was during Chris's presentation, and the question is about the top 5 behaviors that social behavior change interventions are encouraged to change in terms of environment conservation. I don't know, Chris, if you're there.
I'll reach out to him.
Yeah, okay. In the meantime, Aisha, I know you have your hand raised, and I'm wondering if you can actually come in with your question, if you're able to do that. By unmuting your mic, or wait, I believe I can give you the, I can allow you to come in. So here, I think, Aisha, if you can come in with your question, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, Neha. Sorry, I can come in if you want.
Okay, right, Chris, sorry. Aisha will just come back to you.
Yeah,
go ahead, Chris.
Apologies for that. I had somebody in my room at the same time.
So
the question related to the top behaviors, I guess I come back to I'm not an expert on SBCC and climate change, but my reflection to the question, which I think is a very good question, is that it depends on the target population, right? So if it's a mitigation type of a behavior or a mitigation type of an intervention versus an adaptation one, right? So it's mitigation, we're going to be messaging around that population's footprint, environmental footprint broadly, let's say, and not just limited to carbon, but it can be like, the electricity use, the water scarcity example we just heard of, trying to mitigate the broader impact of environmental degradation. It can be, vehicle usage for an urban person, or it can be for the flip side of that, I guess, is for adaptation. So then if the population in the intervention we're talking about is adapting to the result of climate change, we call this an adaptation intervention, that would be on how do we support that population to make decisions that are appropriate to make them and let's say the services and the infrastructure that they have more resilient to climate change. So it could be, how can we, I don't know, I'm just guessing, it's somebody in a floodplain building a house, how can we get the messaging to them that even though it's going to cost a little bit more, it's better to invest in a raised foundation because we know extreme water events are going to happen more often. So I guess that would be like, it's not the best answer, I don't think, but to me, it's really dependent on who the population is and whether we're talking about adaptation or mitigation. That's an excellent question.
Thanks, Chris. And may I also add here that I think the set of examples starting from Yemen, which focused on water sanitation and hygiene, to the conservation, solid waste management example from Jordan, and the last one on water scarcity, has sort of provides us a cue of the kind of behaviors and practices one promotes across this sort of very wide canvas of WASH, environment, and climate change issues. So I would also like to add to your point, Chris, I think here is it also depends on which levels of participant groups or people we are focusing on, from policymakers to communities and households within communities. So you would have different kinds of behavioral areas. And I think the one that the colleague Maha, who presented the work from Jordan on water conservation, did highlight a set of behaviors that they were focusing on. So that was, I found that to be very useful. So we'll move on to Aisha. Aisha, I think you are able to come in.
Hi, I write my question in the QA part.
Okay, so your question is around, we have in Amman, we have awareness, but we need recycle containers to get high value of sorting solid waste. And Iyad and Dominique, would you like to come in here?
I can add on the, because on the question earlier on the top 5 behaviors, and I think what is really relevant and one of the most important problem that we found when we were doing the formative research is the use of the single-use plastic, which can be found everywhere, even in Ashraf and all over Jordan, and not just Jordan, but a lot of countries. And I think getting people to reduce the use of single-use plastic is, I would say, the most important, one of the most important behaviors that we can ask and try to change. So that was the goal in a lot of the messages that we developed, and all the materials that we printed is to minimize the use of single-use plastics because of its impact on the environment, and not just even on our water and on our ground, and because they're everywhere also.
Thank you, Dominique. Any points on the question on solid waste management and recycle containers?
On the recycling of containers, we encourage them. A lot of the messages that we develop for the shelters, especially for each household, is to recycle every a plastic container that they get. Let's say if some of especially for the containers with cover, we tell them to put all their used oil there, especially the household level, so it doesn't get mixed with all others. And then the water container, then make sure that it's clean, and we keep it in good condition so they can use it longer. And all those were we included in a lot of the messaging and all the campaigns. And then we have the community mobilizers who goes to each household and shelters and reminds them on how to reuse a lot of the containers that they get from when they get their supplies. And then those that cannot be, they cannot recycle within their home, that is brought to the Green Center, and then that is packed by the team of Iyad, and that is sold as those plastics PPE, and that commands a lot of a big price, and that's one way we are able to sustain and increase the revenue from recycled plastics.
Thank you, Dominic. Anybody else would like to come in with this? Maria, I have opened the mic, so if you had another question or point, you're welcome to come in. Otherwise, the floor is open for anybody else who has questions for the presenters so far. Okay, we'll move on then to our last presentation for this session. Tariq, the floor is yours now for the final presentation on climate change.
Yes, thank you so much, Neha.
Please do introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I shall. I also like to thank all the organizers for this webinar. And I think we can all agree that climate change is one of the major challenges that humanity will face over the 21st century. And today's presentation, I will go on the impacts of climate change and its impacts more specifically on water scarcity. My name is Tariq Hassan. I'm the climate change specialist with UNICEF at the regional office here in Amman. So this very first graph that you see on screen shows the evolution of temperatures over the last 150, nearly 200 years since the start of the Industrial Revolution. And what we do observe is that since the mid-70s, there's an increase of temperatures. And the only way to explain that increase of temperatures is because there's what's called a greenhouse gas effect. So because there's more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, our planet is actually heating, and that we do know. And what has been established over time is that those greenhouse gases come from human emissions. And we can see that's the overall effect in the brown area of the graph, because the green area of the graph will show the situation without, let's say, the human component. So climate change is a fact, global warming is a fact, and we do know now that it's related to human emissions of greenhouse gases. Anything, go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So of course, these greenhouse gases quite obviously result in overall warmer global warming, but also let's say has also other impacts. So here we're taking the change in the extreme drought of the last same period of time, and you can observe that the number of droughts actually has increased. And what actually this picture shows actually a world map. It's perhaps hard to understand, but it shows that many areas in the world actually have seen an increase of drought, and this is definitely the case in Western Asia, which is where we are now in Jordan. In North Africa is not so clear because of limited data, but definitely in many parts of the world we can notice an increase of drought over the last over the same period of time. And if we go definitely to the next one, we can use the same exercise and do projections in the future, and this is related to the increase of these greenhouse gas effects. So the graph on the left shows the increase of carbon dioxide represented in what's called a representative concentration pathway. I won't go into detail here, but the orange one, which is the 8.5, it's where we are more or less now. It's called business unusual with no change, and it shows the projections of that concentration of carbon dioxide up to the end of this century. And that will be related to an increase of temperature, which you can see on the right graph, which shows an increase of over 5, nearly 6 degrees of average surface temperature, worldwide, global level. And that, sorry, if you just go back a second to previous slide. Yeah, thank you so much. The other colors graph shows the different increase of temperature related to different projected increase of greenhouse of carbon dioxide. The green line, which goes through, is the 1.5 degrees, which we hope to aim not to have catastrophic consequences by the end of this century. And I'll come back to that 1.5 Celsius degree in 2100 later on. Thank you. Next slide. Yes, what does it mean, this business as usual with the RCP 8.5? That means at the regional level, most of the areas will reach that 5 degrees I just mentioned. Many of the areas actually will go way beyond that, with consequences which will obviously be devastating. If we can go on to the next stage, the next graph here. So what kind of consequences are we speaking about? So which we can already see today. So this will be in terms of water security, in terms of food security, in terms of agricultural production, which will be failed. These in turn can result in either migration, conflict, disruption of education, early child marriage. And this will also be true later on with water scarcity. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so these, so the SDGs, which you will know, the Sustainable Development Goals, are trying to address this. And there's a dedicated Sustainable Development Goal for climate action, which involves definitely the fact that we should control greenhouse gas effects, but also the fact, in this case, what I'm showing here, an indicator, which promotes the inclusion of climate change knowledge within the school curriculum, because having knowledge of where we are and where we're heading will definitely help us to address climate change. Next slide, please. And this is, the previous indicator is actually followed by UNESCO, but generally speaking, most of the convention instruments related to climate change are related to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, which started in 1992 with the Rio conference. But over the time, it has come up with a series of instruments, and I'll definitely mention 2 of them here. The first is the Cancun Adaptation Framework, which came up with a national adaptation plan. So each country, well, if they have such a plan, tells them how to adapt to a changing climate. The second one is the Paris Agreement, which came out with a nationally determined contribution. And this one says how the country should try and reach this 1.5 degrees Celsius that I mentioned earlier on, either definitely through mitigation, and also reinforces adaptation plans. These 2 instruments are definitely an area where UNICEF can actually has a big role to play, because these instruments should have a child length in them, and that's where UNICEF steps in. There's also the COP26 of this year, to come back to the previous slide, where there was a recommitment. No, please, the UNFCCC slide. Thank you. A commitment to that 1.5, and there'll be a COP27, which will actually be in the region, and the same thing with COP28. And that goes to the next slide, please. So one area where actually climate change does have an impact is on water stress and water security. So this here is related to another SDG, which follows the water stress at world level. You could typically see that MENA is very strongly affected. Many areas actually are abstracting more water that actually is available, more fresh water than is actually available, which obviously will have catastrophic consequences. Again, in terms of either displacement, conflict, internal migration, education, and early child marriage. If you go to the next slide. Yes. Okay, so I have to very quickly say that water scarcity is not only related to changing climate. There's also other aspects which you should consider, like an increase in population growth, the fact that water is typically undervalued, it is overexploited by certain sectors. Chris mentioned earlier on the agricultural sector, that is undeniable. These are facts, and also migration. So just to let you know about this. If you go to the next slide. Yes, indeed, many people here have come up with excellent suggestions in terms of SBCC, in terms of water stress that was mentioned before by Maha. I just want to mention that on top of addressing the UNFCCC instrument, that's definitely, we have to have youth as an agent of change. That is clearly something which we see has a great impact on addressing climate change. Also, coming back to the water stress and water security, indeed, we have to find ways ahead to improve the water conservation habits at household level, and also to make sure that there is this dialogue between communities who have to also be engaged and the different decision makers. With that, I think I'll come to my last slide. I believe, yeah, which is just to say that addressing climate change, of course, has an impact on water stress and water security. Both has impact on many other sectors, which are represented by their own, let's say all SDGs probably, but these ones I took here, I handpicked them because there's a very clear relationship at this level. And with that, I come to my very, very last slide. I'd like to thank you all. And it was really great to be here. I'm very much looking forward to your questions. Thank you again.
Thanks, Tariq. Thank you. And that really painted quite a picture of concern, which is one of the points that we wanted to bring to all of you, is that in the MENA region in particular, even as an SBCC community, for many of us, and some of us may be working more on water initiatives or working in different areas of this thematic issue, this is an area that we need to increasingly pay attention to. The 3 examples that we've shared with you were examples submitted to the SBCC summit as case studies, and because of this long gap, we've brought these presentations to you now. They represent the sort of whole, again, and I risk being repetitive here, but from water, sanitation, and hygiene to moving towards climate change, a really big canvas. So obviously there's a lot of work to be done, but lots of great new, interesting, emerging examples of good practice that we can draw from. Colleagues, we have time now for question answers. So if you'd like to come in with questions or comments, please let us know. The floor is open, including for Tariq and the last presentation. Okay, I think we don't have many questions and comments here. It's again 3 really excellent presentations. Before we close, there were a few comments that came in, and I'm wondering if Nana, you would like to come in. Dominique and Maha, I'll let you have any comments that you would like to make on some of the questions that came in. Yeah, Maha, please, if there's anything that you would like to say on the questions that had already come in.
Hi, actually, Neha, I'm reading now over the chat. I saw that there is maybe a request to share the videos. I'm trying to find out how. So I don't see major questions for my presentation unless I can't catch them. So please feel free to help me if. So Aisha Abu Alan from Jordan. Yeah, no, I think there is no specific questions for me. Just sharing the videos. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Yeah, you can send the links to us, and what we'll do is we'll extract the colleagues who've joined the call and who've registered, and we'll send out the recordings and the links.
Yeah, it's already there.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah, actually
PDF.
the videos. Yeah,
yeah,
the current presentation, they have the links already.
Yeah, all right.
We didn't play the videos.
Yeah, we'll send the PDF versions also of the presentation so that people have them. Yep. Tariq, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to react to an earlier question, which is about the behavior change related to the impact on the environment. And though that was clearly not my presentation, I want to say that I did like a lot of the presentation on solid waste management, because clearly I think that's one of what I believe it has a very strong impact on the environment and how to reduce the impact. And I mentioned this, and I add up perhaps also wastewater management, because this can definitely have impacts on the water resources, especially groundwater resources, which tend to be sensitive to pollution and contamination, which itself has impacts on water scarcity. So I just wanted to share that thought. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tariq. Very useful. Nana and Dominique, would you like to come in?
No, Neha, nothing much to say. I think I would just like to tell colleagues that The Yemen team is really doing a great job in getting data to drive SBCC, and they should reach out to colleagues, Denise and Abdallah and the others, for what is happening and any other thing else that we can all learn from. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, in our list here today, there are a number of colleagues who are from different organizations. And colleagues, we welcome any further information, connection, sharing of information on all of these issues. We're really keen to see more and more of this kind of work coming from the region. And again, by no means is AUB or UNICEF going to be, you know, a custodian or anything, but it's really to create groups of or communities of practitioners who are interested in this area of work. And this webinar is one way and is a conversation starter. So I think really to use this opportunity to also connect up with each other. Dominique, anything from your end? Dominique and Iyad?
I just want to stress that since this is an ongoing project, so there's a lot more that we hope to share in the future, and we can share after you've sent the PDF presentations. They can email us and let us know some of their questions, and we will be sharing more as we conduct more studies moving forward. So thank you so much for this opportunity and for everyone who attended.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank you to Iyad as well. I think what we will do is we will send your references and email as well, so it's good for people in case they want to get in touch. So colleagues, we're drawing to an end to the time as well. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left, and I wanted to take this opportunity to thank all the presenters for their really excellent presentations and for more or less sticking to the time. Thanks to all of you colleagues who stayed on with us for the webinar. It's not an easy or an area or a thematic area where we've done a lot of work. I mean, this is climate change, environment is areas where we're still building our knowledge and expertise. So these kind of efforts really are, you know, little drops, but valuable drops that we would want to build over time and really have a great pool of experiences, of case studies, and over time guidance and tools, and refine our own approaches in how we do this work. Thanks to Chris and Tariq for joining us for the webinar, and for Rania and Reem, who work behind the scenes with our SBC Summit colleagues in GHU, Johns Hopkins University Center for Communication Programs in Baltimore, who've helped us pull this together with the templates and things. So really just to say, acknowledge all of the work that was done behind the scenes. I'm going to leave you now with Jumana, who will provide and sort of close the whole session. So Jumana, over to you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, do stay tuned for the new, for the other webinars that will come, 3 more coming up in 2022. We will be sending out promotional material as and when the dates are decided. So Jumana, then back to you. And thanks everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the interesting presentations. So we have seen the impact of SBCC on development issues, and this is very important. We have to invest more in social behavior change communication to observe and see a change in development. The 4 panelists mentioned the importance of data and the evidence and the use of evidence in planning SBCC, the participatory approach, the comprehensive approach, as Tariq mentioned in his session, that they all are interconnected together. And the use of entertainment education in changing behavior. So all of these are lessons learned, and we hope that we keep on adding to this. I would like to thank you all. Please stay connected. Visit the summit website and stay connected with us, and don't forget to register if you'd like to attend the webinar, the summit in 2022 in Morocco. Thank you very much, and we'll see you hopefully in 2022 with another webinar on a different topic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, colleagues. So
have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So great, Jumana, you want to stay on for a bit?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Just we still have some
interpreters. Thank you very much, and actually I should have said that before, but thank you very much for being there with us. Sorry, we didn't mention that with everybody because we were listening to the English versions, but thank you very much for your efforts and for translating. Right, I think we have still a few attendees, Jumana.
Yeah.
I think we might have to wait for them to leave.
Can we just close it and then?
Yeah, no, just a moment. I will find a way to remove our colleagues. I think they may not be paying attention to this. So yeah, just a minute. Give me a minute. Yeah, I think. Right, I think we're good now. We don't have any more attendees, and Mahmoud, you're welcome to leave. We were just doing a quick catch up. I see that Rania has left as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Mahmoud.
Would you like to initiate a new link and so that?
No, it's okay. I think we've let's see who the participants are. It keeps saying there's one attendee, but there's no one here.
Yes.
I don't know, it's odd. We kind of removed everybody. You know what? Maybe I'll just send another.
Yes,
invitation.
another
Yeah.
link. Yeah. Okay. See you in a bit. Bye.